Let's start where most people panic. February 2021. Texas is hit by a historic winter storm. Power grids fail, homes go dark. Temperatures plunge below freezing, then rise just enough to trigger a second disaster. Pipes thaw and rupture. Water systems collapse, then surge back to life. And across entire cities, something strange happens. Sinks stop draining. Wedge toilets back up. Showers turn into shallow pools. Plumbers are overwhelmed within hours. Emergency fees skyrocket into the hundreds. Store shelves empty of every chemical cleaner you've ever seen advertised. And suddenly, people are left staring at a problem that feels modern, but isn't. Because buried in online forums and quiet comment threads, a different pattern emerges. Older voices, people who grew up without instant services or endless products, begin repeating the same advice. Heat water. Use what's already in your kitchen. Clear the pipe yourself. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The method they're describing isn't new. It isn't experimental. It isn't even particularly clever. It's ancient. Predates modern plumbing, modern chemistry, and modern industry. And yet most people today have never been taught how or why it works. This isn't just about unclogging a drain. It's about understanding a pattern that shows up everywhere in survival history. Knowledge that quietly disappears when convenience replaces competence. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly how your pipes clog, what actually fixes them, and why one of the most effective maintenance systems ever created costs less than a single coin. The Roman engineers who solved your problem 2,000 years ago. Long before modern homes, the Romans were managing water systems on a scale that still impresses engineers today. Aqueducts stretched for miles, feeding baths, fountains, and entire cities. But those systems had a weakness that will sound familiar. They clogged. Hard water flowing through stone channels left behind mineral deposits, layer after layer of calcium buildup that slowly narrowed the flow. Over time, entire sections would become useless. They didn't have pressure systems. They didn't have synthetic cleaners. What they had was observation. They discovered that acidic liquids, specifically spoiled wine, what we now call vinegar, could break down those mineral deposits. The acid reacted with the buildup, loosening it and restoring flow. This wasn't guesswork. It was practical chemistry, discovered through necessity and repeated use. And it worked well enough to maintain some of the largest water systems in the ancient world. What matters here is not just the method, but the mindset. They understood the material inside their systems, and they matched the solution to the problem. That approach is exactly what most people are missing today. How a French chemist unknowingly completed the system. Jump forward to the late 18th century. Europe is changing fast, and chemistry is becoming a formal science. A French industrial breakthrough produces a simple white powder, sodium bicarbonate. At first, it's just another compound. But households quickly discover its versatility. It cleans, it neutralizes odors, it stabilizes food. And eventually, someone combines it with vinegar inside a blocked drain. The reaction is immediate. A surge of bubbling foam expands through the pipe. Residue loosens. Odors vanish. Flow improves. By the 19th century, this combination becomes standard practice in homes. Farms and workshops across Europe and North America. Not as a miracle cure, but as routine maintenance. Something you did regularly, the same way you sharpened tools or cleaned a stove. This was a culture of self-reliance. People understood their systems because they had to. Small problems rarely became large ones. Why did a simple solution disappear without anyone hiding it? So if this method worked and still works, why did it fade from everyday knowledge? The answer is simpler than most people expect. It couldn't be turned into a product. As industrial manufacturing expanded in the early 20th century, companies realized something powerful. If you package a chemical, brand it, and market it aggressively, you can sell it at a massive markup. Drain cleaners became one of those products. Strong, fast-acting, and easy to sell. And unlike basic household compounds, they could be differentiated, advertised, and repeated as purchases. Over time, shelf space filled with branded solutions. Advertising reinforced a single idea: problems require products. Meanwhile, methods that relied on basic, unbranded materials quietly slipped out of common use. It's not because they failed, but because no one was promoting them. This is a recurring theme in survival history. The most accessible knowledge often disappears first. not because it's ineffective, but because it doesn't generate profit. Understanding what actually blocks your pipes. Before you can fix anything, you need to understand what you're dealing with. In a kitchen sink, the primary issue is grease. Hot oils slide down easily, but as they cool, they solidify. They stick to the pipe walls and gradually trap food particles. Over time, the buildup thickens until flow slows or stops entirely. In a bathroom drain, the problem changes. Hair becomes the core structure, catching soap residue and forming dense tangles that resist most chemical breakdown. Then there's the hidden factor most people overlook: biofilm, living layer of microorganisms that coats the inside of pipes. It acts like glue, binding everything together while producing the unpleasant smells people associate with clogged drains. Each of these requires a different response. And this is where most quick-fix advice fails. It treats all clogs the same, when in reality, they're fundamentally different problems. What really happens when you use baking soda and vinegar? There's a common misunderstanding about this method. People think the bubbling reaction creates pressure that blasts through clogs. It looks dramatic, so it feels powerful. But your plumbing system is designed to release gas. The fizz doesn't build enough pressure to break solid blockages. So why does the method still work? Because the reaction isn't about force. It's about disruption. The bubbling helps break apart biofilm and loosen debris from the pipe walls. It disrupts the microscopic structures that hold clogs together. It also neutralizes odors by interfering with bacterial activity. But on its own, it doesn't remove heavy grease or dense buildup. The real effectiveness comes from what happens next. After the reaction phase, heat becomes the decisive factor. Boiling water remelts solidified grease, turns hardened fats back into liquid form. When combined with a small amount of dish soap, those fats are trapped and carried away instead of sticking again. This is the critical insight. The process isn't a single action, it's a sequence. First, disrupt and loosen. Then melt and remove. That combination is what made the method reliable across generations. Why modern chemical cleaners come with hidden costs? Commercial cleaners rely on extremely aggressive reactions. They generate high heat and break down organic material rapidly, and they do work, but that intensity comes with trade-offs. Plastic pipes can soften under high temperatures. Metal pipes can corrode over time. Repeated use weakens the system you're trying to maintain. There's also a safety dimension. Mixing different chemical residues can produce toxic gases. This isn't theoretical. It's a documented risk that sends people to emergency rooms every year. Even professionals approach these chemicals carefully. When they fail, they leave behind hazardous conditions inside the very pipes that need repair. For occasional severe blockages, these tools have a place. But for routine maintenance, they are far more aggressive than necessary. How to apply this knowledge in real-world situations. In a kitchen sink, heat is your primary tool. Grease is the enemy, so focus on melting and flushing. Boiling water combined with dish soap is often enough to restore flow if used early. In a bathroom, physical removal matters more. Hair won't dissolve easily. You need to extract it first, then clean the remaining residue with an acidic rinse. For ongoing maintenance, the combined method becomes valuable. Regular disruption of biofilm prevents buildup from reaching the point where drastic measures are needed. This is the real lesson. Maintenance is always cheaper, safer, and more reliable than emergency response. Knowing when the problem is beyond basic methods. There are limits to what simple techniques can handle. If multiple drains fail at once, the issue likely sits deeper in the system. Tree roots, structural damage, or mainline blockages require specialized tools. Recognizing that boundary is part of being prepared. Self-reliance isn't about avoiding professionals entirely. It's about understanding when you truly need them. This isn't really about drains. It's about how practical knowledge fades when systems become more convenient. Skills that were once ordinary become rare, not because they're obsolete, but because they're no longer taught. And when disruptions happen, storms, shortages, delays, those gaps become visible. The difference between waiting for help and solving a problem yourself often comes down to something simple: knowing what works and why. That's what people in Texas rediscovered under pressure. Not a new trick, but an old one. Something that had been sitting in their homes all along. What you've just learned isn't a shortcut. It's a system built over centuries of observation, trial, and real-world use. It worked for Roman engineers, rural households, and industrial workers long before modern convenience took over. And still works now. So the next time your drain slows down, don't default to panic or expensive solutions. Understand the problem, apply the right method, use what's already within reach. If this kind of practical history matters to you, if you want more real, tested knowledge pulled from the past and applied to modern life, then make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who still thinks every problem needs a product. So the more people remember how to solve problems themselves, the less dependent they become on systems that can fail. And if there's another forgotten skill you want uncovered, let me know.